So we are on Yud Zayin Amud Beis. Earlier on the Amud, we had brought the Machlokes Abaye and Rava about, in the Mishnah we had discussed whether somebody can put his bar next to where someone else has a bar because it will do damage to the other person's bar. But the Machlokes Abaye and Rava, and then we try to bring a raya from our Mishnah to the Machlokes. We're on the bottom of Yud Zayin Amud Beis, like 7 lines from the bottom. I'm just setting the stage. We had earlier on the Amud, we had the Machlokes Abaye and Rava, whether someone is allowed to put something that will later on do damage. Like, can the first person put his bar near the boundary with the idea that will make that if the other person later puts up his bar, it's going to be damaged by the bar that you put here. So can you put the bar before it does any damage because of a potential damage that it could do later? So Abaye said it's not a problem, and Rava said no, you're not allowed to do it. Right? So that's Habol Lismech Sad Hametzer. Someone wants to make his bar next to the boundary. Abaye Amasaymech Rava Amainasech. Rava says he's not allowed to do it. So now Toshma, we're going to bring a raya, a number of rayas that many of them are the same, basically the same shiloh, from different mishnayos. Toshma, Sela Habobi Yadai. If someone digs a bar on land that is very soft, so when you dig land and that's very soft, it creates sinkholes, and it immediately makes it that it's impossible to dig a bar next to it. So each one can dig his bar on his side of the boundary. Both of them have to keep 3 tvachim away and put and put cement on it, cement the size of the bar. So you see that in order to build such a thing, you have to first keep it, each person, including the first person to do it, has to keep it 3 tvachim away and put sit on it. So you see that you're not allowed to build something that will cause damage. You have to take these ameliorating steps. You have to take these steps that will fix the problem beforehand. So Gemara, no, Baba Yadayim shiny. Like the Mishnah said, it's talking about a specific type of earth that's very vulnerable. In that case, then you're not allowed to build it without separating 3 tvachim and putting sit on it. But on a normal case, you could. So if anything, it's a raya the other way around. To Abaye. So tomorrow the ka'arila, my ka'arila. What says? So what was he? Why are you even asking this as a question on Abaye that you see you're not allowed to build it 3 tvachim away? Over there, it says specifically, it's talking about a specific type of ground. It's mashma than the normal circumstances. You could build next to the Motzei, next to the boundary. So tomorrow, Baba Yadayim Matzrichale. No, it had to tell you that when it's Baba Yadayim, you keep it 3 tvachim away and you put sin. So keeping the Baba Yadayim, since the ground is so soft, the boy in Name Rav Chatvei, maybe even 3 tvachim is not enough. Maybe you have to keep it 10 amas away. So that's the chiddush, not to tell you that under normal circumstances you can keep it, you can go up to 3 tvachim, but to tell you, maybe you could say even like Rava that normally you can't put a bar, but I might think that in this case you need even more than 3 tvachim. Kamashmala. Tashma, another right. We say marchikin es hagefes. We said in our Mishnah, marchikin es hagefes v'sazevel. You have to keep the olive refuse after you squeeze the olives. V'sazevel and manure, v'samelach and salt, v'sasid and lime. This is not talking about cement. This is talking about actual lime. All these things bring out a certain amount of what do you call it? Of moisture. Slayim is flint that also produces a hevel, produces a heat. So all these things have to be kept 3 tvachim mikaysa shechaveri. Oisad besid or visad besid. So all these things, time at ikka kaisel. The mashmois is you have to keep it away from a kaisel, a lack of kaisel. If there had not been a kaisel there before, saimach, you could bring it near. So this l'chayr is raya to abaya that you can, in the first place, build near put something that's going to cause damage near a boundary, and it's not your problem that someday the other person might decide to put something that could be damaged, because of the fact that it says only if there was a kaisel you can't do it. Even if there's no kaisel, also you can't put it near. It's coming to tell you might not have realized that all these things could damage a kaisel. The Mishnah is coming to tell you that you can't put it near a boundary because it will damage a kaisel, but it doesn't mean to tell you that it's only because the kaisel is there. It's because it will damage a kaisel, and therefore the person putting there is not allowed to put it, and if he did so, he's going to have to remove it at the request of his neighbor. Tashma, marchikinis hazroyim. One has to keep away the plants, the seeds that he plants, or machrisha, and the plowing. Someone uses it as a bathroom. Not kaisel, he has to keep it away from a kaisel. Shleisha tvachim, 3 tvachim. Time medika kaisel again. Seems like the reason is only because there is a kaisel there. Because all these things, when you plant and you plow, there's going to be water, and that's going to undermine the kaisel. And obviously the meir lime is also going to make it, it's going to bring liquid. Halek kaisel samach, but the mashmai said if there were no kaisel there, he could do so. So that's mashma like abaya, that prior to there being something being damaged, you're allowed to go up to the boundary, and you don't have to worry about what's going to happen in the future. Like kilak kaisel nami loisam. No, that's not the mashmai. Even though it says he has to keep it away from the kaisel, it would be true even if there was no kaisel. Well, my kamash malan, what is it coming to tell you? Kamash malan de matunta kashal kaisel. It's coming to teach you that moisture, which is brought by any of these things, is bad for the kaisel. If he wouldn't have said it's a kaisel, we wouldn't know these things are damaging. It's a kamash malan. Toshma, again, very similar format in these kashas and terutzim. Toshma vesarichaim. The end of our Mishnah said, you have to keep a millstone. Gimel min hashechef shein daled min harechet. There are 2 parts to a millstone. There's the top part, which is a smaller round, a stone wheel, and the bottom, which is a wider round wooden wheel, round stone wheel. So you have to keep it 3 from the bottom, which is wider, shein daled min harechet, since the top is 1 tefach inset, so you have to be 4 tefachim from that. But in any case, you see that you have to keep it away from a kaisel. Time edeka kaisel, haleka kaisel samach. It's only because there is a kaisel. Like hilek kaisel namile samach. Well, am I kamashmalan? The tyra kashel kaisel. It's coming to tell you that the vibrations that come from a mill are bad for a kaisel. Tashma v'satan shloishim mina kalya shein daled min hashefa. Underneath a tanner, underneath an oven, there was a base that the oven was placed on, and that base sloped upwards. On the bottom, it was 4 tefachim. It stuck out 1 tefach more than the top. So, and then you place the tanner on top of it. So you have to make it 3 from the bottom, which is 4 from the top. Time of the ikka kaisel. But again, it says that you have to keep it, this oven, you have to keep it 3 tvachim away from a kaisel. It's only because there's a kaisel, lack of kaisel samach. So l'chayr again, it's a raya to abaya and shver and rava. Like kileka kaisel nami le samach. Alamai kamashmalan. What is it going to tell you? How kamashmalan the havla kashel a kaisel. It's coming to tell you that the heat that comes out of an oven is bad for a kaisel. Toshma. Another raya. Lo yiftach adam chanusha naftaimim vel shavoyim tachas oitra shechavere. A person can open a home business. People would open up. They'd make a home bakery business. They'd make some baked goods in their house, or they would dye. They would be dyers. They would dye cloth in their house. Underneath, a friend who has a storehouse, because someone who bakes is going to have an oven that's going to cause the heat to rise up, the heat and the hevel to rise up and damage what's in the eitzer. And a dyer also, he'll be cooking and it'll cause the heat to rise up. But refes, bakar, and also he can't keep his animals stabled in his house. because that's going to cause smell that will go up and damage the goods of his friend that's on the second floor. It's only because there's an oitzer on the second floor that will be damaged. Haleka oitzer of it, but if there was nothing on top, it would be fine. So l'chayru, you see again, you only can't make a mazik. You can't put in place a mazik when the nizik, the thing that's being damaged, is already in place. But before that, it's okay. L'chayru, it's a raya to abai and kasha and rava. Saklamara dirashani. No, this is different. Over here, we're talking about a person doing things in his own house. In his own house, he has a little bit more leeway. Einachanami, if it's only because there's an oitzer already there that he can't do it. But before that, he would be allowed to, because you can't infringe so much on a person's personal space that say he can't do something in his house, because eventually that might damage someone on top of it. And I'll prove this to you. It's meduik like this. The Tani Allah, the Bryce explains this Mishnah. If the refes bakar, or whichever one of these things was, it could have been the nachtam, it could have been the bakery, it could have been the dyer, but if any of them were there first, then it's mutter. Then you don't have to remove it if the person puts an oitzer afterwards. So vice dice that it's the reason why this is different. It must be because it's a house, because we never mentioned this thing that if this came first, then it's mutter. So why are we saying that? Because we're trying to say that even a Rava would say that the only reason why we're saying that here is because this is a house and it's different. Tashma. Adam ilan samach l'sada. A person shouldn't plant a tree next to a field. Elam kein herchak imenu daled amas. Unless it was kept daled amas away. But Tani Allah, and the Bryce explains why is this the rule that you can't plant your tree within 4 amas of another person's sada. The reason for that is that when a person plants his tree, one of the things he does is he goes around and he plows under the tree. We've had this before, that they would plow under trees to get rid of any weeds under the tree. And they would also go underneath, they'd bring their animals underneath to pick up whatever fruits there are on the tree. So you need daled amas around the tree. So we're afraid if he puts it closer than daled amas to the friend's field, he's going to end up, the person with the tree is going to end up trampling on the other person's field. The only reason why you can't put it within daled amas is because of this problem that he'll end up trampling on the field. He could put it right up to the boundary, even though we know that there are roots that come out and damage, like we're going to see in the Mishnah on Daf Chafei, where we have the Machlekes Rebbeisi and the Rabbanan, that we say that roots will go out and damage up to 25 amas. So the Chayru, you should have had, why didn't we say because of that reason? So it must be that because since he's putting up the tree before anything is on the other side, we're not worried about the roots damaging. We're not worried about the roots going into his field and stopping him from working. L'chayra, it's a raya to Abaye that we don't worry about a future potential damage that will be done, and therefore he could put his damager right next to the boundary. No, we're talking about over here where there is a stone foundation underground that stops any roots from coming through. So therefore, the only issue is that he'll take his wagon and he'll thresh, he'll plow underneath and cause damage to daled amas around. So then the Maser Shas adds in the words. Actually, doesn't. Hayegeda bentayim. The Mishnah continues. Hayegeda bentayim. If there was a mechitza in between the two properties, that means he planted a tree, but there was a boundary between him and his neighbor. He can go right up to the boundary because we're no longer worried that he's going to plow past the Geder. The Geder is going to stop him. So So now we're going to put in the Mr. Shah says the answer to this is Hachanami B'Tzunma. That case is also talking about, even though it says that it's talking about what there's a gather, it doesn't mean there's just a gather. There's also a tzunma, there's also a foundation underneath that's stopping it from going, and that's why he can build up to the gather. We're not worried about the damage that the roots will do. So if you're saying that that's the case, that when there's a gather as well as a tzunma, what about the seifa of this price? If his nevertheless, if his shroshim, if his roots extend into his neighbor's field, the person whose field the roots went into can cut out the roots down to 3 tvachim in order that he should be able to plow in his own field. So I'm sorry, if we're talking about like you're claiming that there was a stone foundation underground that was stopping roots, how did the roots get into his field? That the Mishnah is saying that if they get into his field, he can cut them out. They should never have gotten there in the first place.
I mean, you can cut into his side.
I'm sorry?
You can cut under the gate into his side? You cut the roots?
No, it's saying, let's say Ruvain planted a tree in his thing.
Okay.
And he had a gather that made it that he can't anymore plow into Shimon's field. But the roots went into Shimon's field. Shimon is allowed to cut the roots that come onto his side.
Whatever.
He's only interested. He doesn't care about what's going on in Reuven's side. But the roots that are on his, they're going to stop him. They're going to break his plow. When he's going to try to plow, the roots are going to break his plow. So he can take his chainsaw and cut the roots down to 3 tvachim. More than 3 tvachim, he doesn't need a cut because it doesn't impede the plowing. But in any case, the Gemara's question is, if you're saying the reason he was allowed to do this is because we're not worried about the roots going in, because there's a tzunma, there's a stone foundation blocking, how did the roots get into Shimon's side? How is it even possible? So when it says we have to change the lashon. Hachikama. Be loved tzunma. If there was no tzunma, that's all talking about. If there was no tzunma, in that case, where there wasn't a tzunma, then he could cut away the roots. Tashma, this is the big machlekes Rabbanan and the Rabbi Yossi that's later on in Daf Chafei. The Rabbanan say that a person has to keep his tree away from a bar 25 amas in order to not to damage a bar. Taimadik a bar. The mashma is only because there is a bar. Halek a bar is samach. But if not for the existence of the bar, you can bring it right up to the boundary. If there's no bar, he also would not be allowed to put it near the boundary. What it's coming to tell you is that, but once there is a bar, it could go up to 25 amas. You have to tell us this rule. So we didn't say that he's not allowed to put it even before. But we want to tell you that it could come damage a bar. If that's the case, Ema Seifa, then Elam Kadam, if the tree was there first, and then the other person decides to dig a bar, and now the roots are going and damaging his bar because it's only 20 amas away. This guy put his bar 20 amas away from this person's tree. Then he doesn't have to cut down the tree. So if the rule is that he has to keep his tree from the beginning 25 amas away from the gather, how did this whole situation happen? He should have been, meaning not only how did it happen, let's say he violated the rule and he put it 20 amas away. He can't say, oh, I was allowed to put my tree here. You weren't allowed to. If you put it there illegally, then if it later causes damage when the other person puts a bar, you're responsible. Even Rabbi Yossi, how could we say that a person would be potter in that case? If the Elam was kadam lo yikatz, but it never should have been within 25 amas of the other person's property. So he says the way that it got within 25 amas of the property is Ruvain had a big piece of property, and he planted a tree, and then he cut his property in half, and he sold half of it, and the part that he sold was 2 amas away from the tree, and then the person he sold it to wants to build a bar. So in that case, the tree was already there. That's what we're saying, that he can't, he doesn't have to cut down the tree because this guy decided to build a bar within the area that would get damaged by the tree. That's what we're talking about over here with the lekech. Toshma, marchikin es hamishra. One should be marchik a mishra, which you've had a bunch of times. It's a very smelly way of soaking flax, min hayerak, from vegetables, because it will the smell of the soaking flax will damage the vegetables. So they would boil the flax. Vesakrishin are leeks min habetzalin. When you have leeks next to onions, it ruins the onions. Vesachardel min hadvarim. And you have to keep mustard. You can't plant your mustard next to dvarim, next to bees. Rashi explains, because what happens is the bees will eat the mustard, and then they get very. It's like whets their appetite. It makes them very. Mustard is very sharp, so then they have to go back and eat their own honey in order to take away the taste of the mustard out of their mouths. So the person who has a beehive, will lose all his honey if someone plants mustard, because his bees will eat up his own honey. So, in any case, the bottom line is mustard damages a beehive. But in all these cases, time at Yerek, halakha Yerek samech. We just picked the first example that we gave. You can't soak flax near vegetables. It's only because the vegetables are already there. But if the vegetables were not there, he could put his flax, his mishra, right next to the border. It's again a raya tabaya. Even if there's no yarek there, he still can't put it. All the cases of the Mishnah are to tell you, like we answered on every single, we had the same answer basically 6 times. It's coming to tell you these facts. Otherwise, I wouldn't know that even if it was there previously, it's coming to tell you this din, that we should be aware that Mishra damages Yerek, and that leeks damage onions, and that mustard damages bees. So tomorrow, I'll ask you a question from the Sefer. Rabbi Yosi mater b'charda. Rabbi Yosi says the last case that we gave, that we said you're not allowed to put your mustard next to the bees. He says that's not a problem. Because the person who has the mustard can tell him, you're telling me that my mustard is damaging your bees. Your bees are also damaging. You have to keep your bees away from my mustard. They're eating up my mustard. So it's true that you're saying that they go back and eat up their honey after eating the mustard, but first they're eating my mustard and they're damaging me. Mm-hmm. Now the Gemara says, so this is the kasha. You're trying to say that it's just coming to tell us the din, that Einachanami, you're not allowed to be Saimech, and we're just coming to tell you this din. But Rabbi Yossi is saying that the mustard owner is on the same footing as the bee owner. So how did this come to place in the first? How did this come to be in the first place? We're saying we're going according to Rava, that you're not allowed to place it near the border. So how did the one with the chardal put it near the border, and how did the one with the bees put it? Both of them should be us to put it near the border. Amar Papa says, "B'lekeach." Again, we're talking about a case. The way this came to be, even according to Rava, you'd say it's talking about where this guy had his beehive by the border, and he also, let's say, he also had mustard seeds over there, and he sold them, and now the two owners are complaining. So tomorrow, my time with the Rabbanon. If we're talking about a lekeach, that means whoever was the one who did the damage. It was either the mishra that soaks the linen, or the leeks, or the chardal. He put it within his own land, and then he sold it to someone else, who then put the person who he sold it to then put the other part into it. So, according to Rava, why the Chachamim make the person who put his mishra there, he bought something with a mishra, and then the other guy's putting something that's being damaged? Why would they say the person who had his thing there previously and he put it there when he was allowed to, because it wasn't that was all part of his property originally? Why does he have to remove it? But my time of Rabbi Yossi, why is Rabbi Yossi only being chaylik on the case of the chardal? Because he says both are damaging each other's. Even in the first two cases, he should say that the person who's doing the damage should not be required to remove his damager, because he had placed them, we're talking about B'lei Kaf, where he was allowed to put it there in the first place. Afilu Mishra B'Yarkanami. Ravina explains now. The reason why the Rabbanan say it's going to be Asur is, even though he placed his Mishra and his leeks and his Chardal there legally, he didn't do anything wrong by placing them there, it's still his responsibility to remove something that's doing damage. That's the Rabbanan's Shita connected Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi holds, like as we're going to see, that a person, the responsibility is on the person who's being damaged to remove his thing, unless, as we're going to say, unless it's gira didei, unless it's coming directly from the damage is being done directly, it's going instantaneously, then Einachanami, even Rabbi Yossi is masking. But that's going to come later on. But something that's attenuated, that takes an interim step, Rabbi Yossi holds it's the person who's being damaged, he has to take away his damage. But the Rabbanan hold it's all a mazak to marchik asma, even if he put it there legally. So you're saying that Rabbi Yossi holds it's the responsibility of the person who's being damaged to remove. Why is Rabbi Yossi only say in the case where both are doing damage to each other? Then we say that neither has to move because they're both equal. If we hold that it's on the nizik, the person who's being damaged to move away, why in the first two cases? We said we're talking about B'lei Kaf. So he had the right to put his mishra, and he had the right to put his creation there, even though they're going to do damage to the Yarek and to the B'tzalim. So why is he allowed? Why does he? What's the problem with it? So tomorrow, Rabbi Yossi also holds it's the mazik responsibility. He's saying that Rabbi Yossi really agrees with the Rabbanan that it's al hamazik, and therefore the Mishra and the Krishan Taka he has to move away. But in the case where they're both equal, that's where I say that we're both maskim, so there's no reason for me to move away more than you. For Rabbanan dvarim l'chadolay maskilei. Rabbanan disagree with the Metzias. They say that no, the bees do not damage the chadol. It's a one-way street. Only the chadol is damaging the mustard is damaging the bees, but the bees are not damaging the mustard. If we're talking about the seeds, the bees can't find them. They're too small. And if you talk about it eats the actual mustard plants, that will just grow back. They don't do enough damage. But this is just not true. How could you say you're saying that Rabbi Yossi agrees with the Rabbanan that that's the mission of Atanan. Rabbi Yossi even though a bar was there before the Elon, lo yikotz. If a person plants a tree and then the tree is going to damage it, if it's within 25 atmas, he doesn't have to cut down the tree. Since it's in different, I'm doing in my rishus and you're doing in your rishus, and I don't have. Why do I have to be responsible? Because I'm planting a tree that will cause damage in your property. You, who said you have to make a bar within reach of my tree? So you see from the Mishnah clear that Rabbi Yossi holds it's the person who's being damaged. It's his responsibility to remove himself from a place where he's going to get damaged. The Rabbanan ka'amalahu. This machlekes about chardal, Rabbi Yossi doesn't really hold that by the Mishra and by the Karshinan that he'll be maskim over there. He's just saying lishi tascha. Lididi ala nizik lahachikas atzma. Ba'afilu mishaviyarka. Even by the linen that's soaking, the flax soaking, and by as well as, even though it doesn't mention in the Gemara, by the karshinin next to the leeks that are damaging the onions. It's not the person who's putting down the mazik that can put it right up to the border and he doesn't have to worry about it. Loy by rechuki, because it's up to the nizik, the one who's being damaged, to move it. But according to you that say it's on a mazik, to that I can understand why you would say in those cases. Like Rabbi Yossi holds, they're both damaging each other. Like we said before, the Rabbanan disagree about the Metzias. Ibe bin say, if it's talking about the seeds, he's not going to find that bees won't find the seeds, and if it's flowers, it will grow back. So therefore, there's no damage; it's a one-way damage, and therefore, even in that case, they'll say, according to the Rabbanan, according to their shita, that it's al hanizik, they would have to move it away on all three cases. Yasher Kayach. Be'ez Hashem.